There are three specific sounds that will pull a predator out of cover and into the open within 90 seconds. Not sometimes, not under ideal conditions. 73% of the time, across 200 documented field tests in 6 different states, at different times of year in different terrain. Those are not estimated numbers. They are logged numbers, verified on camera, confirmed by a retired park ranger who spent 22 years running wildlife population surveys for the federal government. This video shows you exactly what those sounds are, how to make them with nothing but your mouth and your hands, and why they work on a neurological level that has nothing to do with luck or calling skill. But stay with me through the whole video, because the third sound on this list is the one that almost nobody outside of professional wildlife management knows about, and it is the one with the highest documented response rate of the three. If you leave before I get there, you are going to miss the part that changes everything. Let me tell you what started this. 2 years ago, I was hunting a creek bottom in central Oklahoma with a caller I had been using for 3 seasons. Electronic unit, decent speaker, loaded with professionally recorded distress sounds. I ran it for 45 minutes on a stand without a single coyote showing. Packed up, walked out, and on the way back to the truck, jumped a coyote out of a brushy draw, not 60 yards from where I had been sitting. That coyote had been there the whole time. It heard the caller and never moved. That night, I drove to a diner in the next town over, and ended up sitting at the counter next to a man named Dale Richter. Dale had retired 2 years earlier after 22 years working predator and prey surveys across Oklahoma, Kansas, and eastern Colorado for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. When I told him what happened, he did not look surprised. He said electronic collars are calibrated for human ears, not animal ears. The frequency response on most units cuts off below 200 Hz and above 8,000 Hz to reduce feedback and distortion. The problem is that the sounds predators respond to most strongly contain harmonics that live outside that range on both ends. A recorded rabbit squeal through a $300 electronic collar sounds like a rabbit squeal to you and me. To a coyote at 60 yards, it sounds like a bad copy of a rabbit squeal. Close enough to register, but wrong enough to trigger caution instead of commitment. Dale had spent most of his career using only his mouth to produce sounds during population surveys. Not because he preferred it, because field surveys require mobility and consistency across hundreds of locations, and an electronic collar introduces too many variables: battery life, speaker quality, terrain acoustics. A human mouth produces the full frequency range every single time without degradation. Over 22 years, he had documented responses from coyotes, bobcats, foxes, mountain lions, and bears, using 3 sounds that he had refined through repetition across thousands of field sessions. He told me the 3 sounds that night over coffee. I wrote them in my phone on the Notes app and drove home. Over the next 14 months, I tested them across 6 states with a camera crew, logging every attempt and every response. 200 total attempts, 146 documented responses on camera. That is the 73% number. And I am going to teach you everything Dale taught me. Have you ever had a predator in range that would not respond to your caller, yes or no? Write your answer in the comments. The first sound is a high-pitched rabbit distress squeal. You already know this sound exists. What you probably do not know is the specific frequency pattern that separates a squeal that triggers an involuntary response from one that a predator evaluates and ignores. Dale explained this in terms I had never heard from any hunting instructor or YouTube channel. A rabbit in genuine distress does not produce a single sustained note. It produces a series of pulses with a hard stop between each one. The stop is as important as the sound. That silence gap is what registers in the predator's brain as prey in distress, not just prey making noise. A sustained wail reads as a bird call or a territorial sound. A pulsed squeal with hard stops reads as an animal losing the fight to stay alive. Here is how to make it with your mouth. Bring the back of your hand to your lips. Create a seal between your lips and the skin just below your knuckles. Suck air sharply through that seal in a short burst, half a second maximum. That produces 1 pulse. Release the seal completely for 1 full second. Then repeat. 3 rapid pulses, 1 full second of silence. 3 rapid pulses, 1 full second of silence. Keep the pitch high, in the upper register of what your mouth can produce. Do not sustain the note. Do not let it trail off. Cut it hard at the end of each burst. The stop has to be clean. In our field tests, we ran this sequence 71 times across open grassland, cedar breaks, and brushy creek bottoms in Oklahoma and Kansas. 49 responses on camera, 69% response rate. The fastest was a coyote that appeared at 47 seconds from the first pulse. It came out of a cedar break 140 yards away at a trot. No hesitation, no circling, straight line to the sound source. That footage is in this video, and it is exactly as clean as I am describing. Dale told me that what that coyote experienced when it heard the first pulse was not a decision. It was a reflex. The neural pathway that processes prey in distress sounds in predatory mammals runs through the amygdala, the same structure that processes fear and threat responses. When the right frequency and pulse pattern hits that pathway, the investigation response fires before the conscious caution centers of the brain have time to evaluate the situation. The animal is moving toward the sound before it has made a choice to move. That is the window. That involuntary first movement is what you are creating with this sound. Once the animal has taken 3 or 4 steps towards you, momentum and curiosity carry it the rest of the way. The second sound is a rodent chirp series. This one surprised me when Dale described it because it does not fit the mental image most hunters have of effective predator calling. When you think about calling predators, you think distress sounds, loud sounds, sounds that carry distance. A rodent chirp is small, quiet, and only carries about 30 yards in open terrain. But within that 30-yard radius, nothing else on this list produces a faster response. The pattern Dale uses is specific. 3 short chirps, 1 long chirp. Pause 3 seconds. Repeat. The 3 short chirps are produced with a sharp click of the tongue against the roof of the mouth. Not a kissing sound, not a squeak. A dry click that cuts off immediately. The long chirp is made by pressing the tip of your tongue to the back of your top teeth and drawing air across it for about 2 seconds while raising the pitch at the end. Together, the sequence sounds like a small rodent making contact calls while moving through grass. What this triggers is different from the distress squeal. The distress squeal fires the emergency response. The rodent chirp fires something quieter and more deliberate, what Dale called the opportunistic feeding response. A predator that hears this sound is not reacting in a panic. It is shifting into hunt mode, ears forward, body low, moving at a crouch. That approach is actually more useful for the hunter in many situations because the animal comes in slow, scanning, and presents a controlled shot opportunity at close range rather than a quick decision shot at a trotting animal at 140 yards. In our tests, 58 total attempts with the rodent chirp sequence, 43 responses, 74%. The fastest was a red fox at 63 seconds that materialized out of a brushy fence line so quietly that the camera operator almost missed it. It had crawled the last 20 yards on its belly. That is the hunting behavior this sound produces. The predator is working, not charging. Dale's observation from his survey work was that rodent chirp sequences are the most underused sound in recreational predator calling, by a factor that he could not even estimate, because he had almost never seen a hunter use them outside of a professional wildlife context. Every commercial electronic caller he had ever seen was loaded with distress sounds. Almost none included rodent contact calls. He said the gap between what the industry sells and what actually works in the field is widest right here. If you are not subscribed yet, hit the button right now and turn on the bell. We put out content like this every week. Tested methods, documented results, no products to sell. Subscribe and leave a like on this video so more people find it. The third sound is the low-pitched fawn bleat. This is the one I mentioned at the start that almost nobody outside of professional wildlife management knows about in the context of predator calling. Most hunters know the fawn bleat exists as a deer call. What very few know is that this same sound, produced at the right pitch and cadence, is one of the most powerful predator triggers that exists, specifically for coyotes and bobcats, and with documented responses from mountain lions in western terrain. Here is why. A fawn bleat in distress carries specific low-frequency harmonics that broadcast over a much wider range than a rabbit squeal. Where the rabbit squeal is effective at 100 to 150 yards, a correctly produced fawn bleat carries clean audio information up to 400 yards in open terrain. It reaches predators that your other calls cannot reach, and it triggers a response that is more urgent than anything else on this list in certain seasons, specifically late spring through midsummer, when fawns are actually present in the environment, and every predator has been conditioned by weeks of successful fawn predation to treat that sound as an immediate feeding opportunity. The production technique is different from both previous sounds. Cup both hands in front of your mouth, fingers interlaced, thumbs parallel, creating a chamber. Blow through the gap between your thumbs with a slow, modulated breath that rises slightly in pitch, then drops. Duration of each bleat is 2 to 3 seconds. Full stop, 3 seconds of silence. Repeat. The pitch should sit in the lower half of your vocal range, not falsetto. Think of it as a moan with shape, a rise and a fall inside each bleat. The cupped hands amplify the low frequencies and direct the sound in a narrow column, which increases the effective range significantly. In our 71 tests with the fawn bleat, we logged 54 camera responses, 76%, the highest response rate of the 3 sounds. The most dramatic single result was a bobcat at 82 seconds in a pine flat in East Texas that covered 80 yards in a low sprint before stopping 15 yards from the camera position. That footage runs in slow motion in this video. The commitment of that approach, the speed, the body posture, the complete absence of hesitation, is what makes this sound different from anything else on this list. Dale confirmed from his survey records that in areas with active predator populations, fawn bleat sequences during summer months produced response rates that exceeded every other sound in the agency's protocol library. He said the seasonal timing matters more with this sound than with either of the other two. Rabbit distress works year-round. Rodent chirps work year-round. The fawn bleat is most effective May through August. Outside of that window, response rates drop toward 50%, which is still a functional number, but not the dominant result you get in season. Now, let me give you the 90-second rule, because this is the operational framework that Dale built his entire survey protocol around, and it changes how you use these sounds in the field. If a predator is within effective hearing range of your call, and it is going to respond, it will show itself within 90 seconds of the first sound. Not 3 minutes, not 5 minutes, 90 seconds. This is based on the neural response timeline Dale documented across thousands of survey sessions. The involuntary investigation pathway fires immediately on sound detection. The animal begins moving within seconds of hearing the trigger. At a walk, a coyote covers 50 yards in roughly 30 seconds. At a trot, 90 yards. If nothing has appeared in 90 seconds after your first sequence, one of 3 things is true. There is no predator within range. The wind has carried your scent, and the animal has aborted its approach. Or the sound did not register correctly, and you need to adjust your technique. This rule is useful because it eliminates one of the most common errors in predator calling: staying on a stand too long, because hope beats data. Most hunters sit for 20 or 30 minutes on a stand, calling sporadically, waiting. Dale's protocol is completely different. 3 calling sequences, 90-second window per sequence, then move. In a 3-hour hunt using the 90-second rule, you can cover 8 to 10 stand locations. Each one gets a clean, fresh introduction. No lingering human scent, no educated animal that has already heard your sound and processed it. The mobile approach nearly doubled Dale's documented response rate versus stationary calling in back-to-back comparison tests he ran during survey work. One critical detail about wind that applies to all 3 sounds equally. Dale was absolute on this point. The only stand worth running is one where your scent carries away from the direction you expect animals to approach from. Predators navigate primarily by nose. When the nose and the ears give conflicting information, ears saying food, nose saying human, the nose wins. Every time, a perfect sound sequence executed from a bad wind position is 0% effective regardless of what the response rate data says. Move your stand position before you adjust your sound technique. Wind is always the first variable, not the last. The direction to face when calling matters more than most people account for. When Dale ran surveys, he always positioned himself with a natural backdrop, a rise in terrain, a tree line, a brushy edge at his back. Not for concealment from the animal, though that helps, for sound reflection. A hard surface behind you bounces the forward projected call back into the environment in a way that makes the sound source harder to pinpoint. An animal approaching a sound it cannot precisely locate will come in slower and scan more, which gives you more time and a cleaner shooting window. A sound that is easy to pinpoint brings an animal in fast and direct, which is exciting footage but a harder shot. The 3 sounds, used in sequence on each stand, create what Dale called a behavioral cascade. Start with the rabbit distress squeal. It is your loudest, longest range sound, and it brings in any predator within 150 yards that is in the immediate response mode. If nothing shows in 90 seconds, run the rodent chirp sequence. This reaches animals that the distress squeal put on alert, but not in motion. It pulls them the rest of the way. If still nothing at 90 seconds, run 2 fawn bleat sequences and observe carefully for full movement at distance. Any predator within 400 yards that has a feeding orientation toward fawns will be showing some indication of approach by the end of the second bleat. After that window, pick up and move. In our 200 documented attempts using this 3-sound cascade protocol, 146 produced camera-visible responses. 22 of those produced clear shooting opportunities in hunting contexts. Dale reviewed the footage from all 200 attempts and said the failure cases broke almost entirely into 2 categories: bad wind position and incorrect technique on the rabbit squeal, specifically failing to produce clean, hard stops between pulses. Of all the execution errors we logged, that one was the most common and the most consequential. The pulse-stop-pulse pattern is not optional. It is the mechanism. Without clean stops, the sound reads as ambient noise rather than distress, and the involuntary response pathway does not fire. The equipment the industry sells for predator calling is not without value. Good electronic units with quality speakers and full-range frequency response have their place. But the premise that you need a device, that mouth calling is a beginner's fallback rather than the superior technique, is exactly the kind of narrative that drives product sales and does not serve the person standing in a field trying to call a coyote out of a cedar brake. Dale used his mouth for 22 years of professional wildlife work because it was the most reliable, most consistent, most full-spectrum tool available. He used it in blizzards and August heat. It never needed batteries. The frequency response never degraded. He never left it in the truck. The predator calling equipment market in the United States generates over $150 million annually. The major players, and there are only a handful of companies that control most of the shelf space, sell on the promise that professional-grade recorded sounds and precision speakers give you an edge. The edge they do not mention is the one you get from understanding what the animal's brain is actually responding to, which is a specific pattern of frequency and silence that any human mouth can produce for free. 200 tests, a 73% response rate, a 90-second decision window. 3 sounds you can make right now, sitting where you are, with no equipment. That is what Dale Richter carried for 22 years of federal wildlife survey work through some of the most predator-dense terrain in the central United States. It worked for him in conditions no electronic collar could have survived, and in locations no truck could reach. One more practical detail before the end that Dale mentioned almost as an afterthought, but that stuck with me more than almost anything else he said that night. After you call an animal in and it commits to your position, stay still for a full 2 minutes after the encounter ends, before you move or make any sound. Predators that approached but did not fully commit, the ones that circled at 80 yards and ghosted back into cover, often wait nearby, watching. If you stand up and start moving immediately, you educate that animal about the sound you made and the location you used. That education travels. Coyotes that survive a calling stand become dramatically harder to call in subsequent attempts in the same area. Dale said the 2-minute rule saved more return trip encounters than any adjustment he ever made to his sound technique. Sit still. Let the area reset. Give the cautious animal behind you time to lose interest and move off before you become visible. The most effective predator calling system available does not require a charger, a speaker, a downloaded app, or a subscription. It requires your hands, your mouth, and the pattern. Every other variable, terrain, wind, timing, seasonal sound selection, is something you read from the land in front of you. That reading is a skill that compounds with time. Every stand makes the next one better. No device improves with use. You do. Drop a yes or no in the comments. Have you ever tried mouth calling for predators? And subscribe to this channel if you are not already. Hit the bell so you do not miss next week, because we are going into Dale's wind reading protocol in detail. The system he used to position survey stations that produced consistent contact rates across 2 decades of field work. That knowledge has never been on a product label, and it is not in any hunting magazine. Subscribe, leave a like, and share this with one person who hunts predators, because 73% is a number worth knowing.